So after the villains knowing not only Peter Parker's secret identity, but the knowledge and location of his family, and Harry Osborn seemingly just straight up being dead, murdered by some of the other villains, Spider-Man's entire life has been flipped upside down, and as we will see, it's going to continue to get even crazier. But welcome back to the Hero Informer. As you see with Peter though, yeah, he had to leave everything behind in New York and essentially go on a run, start a new life with his family, specifically out in the mountainside in the middle of the desert. And here with this Ultimate Peter Parker being very different from his 616 variant, sure, leaving everything behind in New York, everything that he has grew up and known is crazy, but at the same time, he is completely different here. He not only is married, but he has children. He is a husband and a father, meaning his priorities are way different and he now has a family to protect. With even Mary Jane trying to be the optimist and seeing the brighter side, saying, hey, we're not on the run, we're just on a vacation. And regardless of whatever you want to call it, running, fleeing, being on vacation, Spider-Man in his heart is a hero. So yes, while he is keeping his family safe and doing his job as a father, he still feels deep down that he is supposed to be helping people, not just sitting back and waiting till all of this blows over. Thankfully, as we will see very soon, there's a little bit of a situation that only someone like Spider-Man can help solve. Though what we do see here and for now, the Parkers have essentially turned into RV people, renting a camper and, staying at a little RV park with a bunch of other campers. And they have been here for a little while trying to lay low, even to the point of getting to know some of the other neighbors here. One in specific being an older guy named David. And David's an interesting fella, He is more or less a conspiracy theorist. Things like not trusting the government, questioning everything, and even just trying to detach himself from the surveillance of city life, which knowing the overarching villain, the Maker, who has had a hand in creating this entire world, yeah, David is pretty much on the right track with that. Though for one of his little conspiracies, he goes on to tell Peter that deep inside of the canyons over here, there's a abandoned military base, and nobody knows what's going on over there. Weird sounds, like the earth itself is moving. People have straight up disappeared going out there. No, not like lost or being misplaced, but straight up abducted. David saying all of this just tries to warn the family to be safe and, go explore somewhere else and not over there. But with him not realizing that he was talking to Spider-Man himself, yeah, Spider-Man's definitely gonna go and use his powers to go investigate and see what he can find. Because with his great powers, you know the rest. But the very interesting thing we see about this new Ultimate Universe is that now there isn't just one Spider-Man or Spider-Vigilante, but there is two. Peter Parker being Spider-Man, and now his son, Richard Parker, being the new Spider-Boy or black-suited Spider-Man, as he doesn't really have a specific title right now, it's more of a work in progress. Either way, with him of course being here on this little trip away from New York, we see him still in contact with this universe's version of the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, who instead of being someone relative to Peter's age, here she is instead younger, being around the same age range as his son. So even with everything being shifted and changed in this Ultimate Universe, a Black Cat is still going to be involved in some way with a Spider-Man. But as we see here, them going on to talk and message and text each other, slowly their relationship and getting to know each other is going slightly past just basic acquaintances, which is dangerous because Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat, is involved with the Kingpin and all the other villains, so of course that's going to lead nowhere good. Either way, Peter Parker, the main Spider-Man, shows up, causing Richard to finally suit on. And seeing Peter with his son, two versions of Spider-Man coexisting at the same time, it just does something to me. Because now thinking about it, this just opens so many more doors and opportunities and potential storylines. It just has so much potential. That's because traditionally, Spider-Man is always shown to have more daughters than sons. Iconically, May Parker before she got erased from the timeline and whatever within the main Marvel Universe, but never really any sons, especially ones with powers or at least being a vigilante just like him. But as you directly see, Peter in universe doesn't share the same sentiment that I do, as he even goes on to say, I'm still not sure about all of this. Why again is it a good idea to bring you along on this little adventure here? Richard, his son, just going on to give a very childish but still pretty accurate answer saying, historically team-ups are awesome, and it being a father and son one, people just eat it up, especially the sons, which sure may have some merit and truth, but for Peter, teaming up with his son here, being a hero and doing good, isn't just for fun or being sentimental, because potentially doing this has very real consequences. Peter continuing on saying, you do understand that something bad happened to Harry Osborn, right? And now he's gone, dead. And the truth is, I want to protect you from things like that forever. But whether I like it or not, at some point you're going to be on your own. Peter essentially saying and doing what any good father should do, preparing his children, his son in this case, to eventually become his own person, a grown man sharing some of the great responsibility that Peter also now has. But this here also raises another question. As you know, Richard technically doesn't have any powers like Peter does, you know, the traditional Spider-Man powers, super strength, speed, wall crawling, spider sense, whatever. All of his abilities are inside of the suit he's wearing, which looks like Venom, yes, but it's not alien in nature or anything. It's really just a high-tech suit mimicking the powers of Spider-Man. The crazy part being it's kind of sentient and conscious, being piloted and controlled by artificial intelligence modeled after Peter himself. But Peter here still wants to put a little ground rules down for his son in this artificial intelligence version of himself and just make sure everybody's on the same page here. Going on to ask the AI version of himself, so if you ever have to make a choice between saving me and saving him, Richard, you know what to do, right? Here's something very funny, as the AI just simply answers, yes, Peter, because I am modeled after you. If anything ever happens, if everyone is in danger, instead of choosing between just saving Peter and Richard, he's going to save everybody. Which is a very Peter Parker answer and way of thinking, because yeah, if Spider-Man could help it, he's going to do everything in his power to shoot for the best outcome in whatever situation. With all of that being cleared up now though, they instead now decide to go investigate the abandoned military base where everybody was disappearing. Father and son Spider duo side by side, embarking on their first official mission. And with Peter now being in full-on teacher mode, as soon as they swing in and land, he goes to give his son a little bit of advice, saying this is your first lesson of the day. If you get a bad feeling about something, always assume something is wrong, even if you don't see anything. And just like that, his lesson is proved correct as his spider sense starts to go off as a giant sand fist comes up and grabs him, marking the appearance of Ultimate Sandman. Now this is wild for a couple reasons. One, neither of the heroes here have ever encountered Sandman or even know what he is, nor know of his weaknesses. I mean, yes, he is sand, so you know, heat and water are obvious things that could disrupt him, but for all intents and purposes, Sandman is one of Spider-Man's most powerful villains, because effectively, how are you going to get rid of a giant being just made out of straight sand? Like, you can't really punch him away, he could just regroup and reform. Very hard to effectively get rid of unless you have prep. Now, that's not to say that there aren't any villains stronger or more powerful than him, because of course you have like Carnage or even Morlun in the other Inheritors, but still Sandman at his highest potential is pretty up there in terms of power. Because as we will soon find out, yeah, the spider heroes here have no way to really deal with him effectively. Thankfully though, they don't have to directly fight him, just to survive. As because this area that they are in here isn't just a military base, but it's a prison. As we see certain arcs and towers around the entire premises, charge up and instantly defeats Sandman just like that, momentarily disrupting his form and concentration and sending him back down just to normal sand. And I say momentarily in the truest version of the word, because yeah, Peter barely has time to recognize what even happened, what to do, how do we escape the situation, as instantly Sandman forms once more and grabs Peter. And for whatever reason, this giant sand creature, Sandman, isn't just trying to like beat Peter to death or anything, but he's purposely grabbing Peter to try and attack and destroy the energy towers keeping him prisoner. Because once again, the same thing happens, it charges up and disrupts his sand form, sending Peter crashing down without any clue in the world about what's going on. Peter even going on to confirm this, saying, I don't even know what's going on, except that the tower keeps blasting him apart. But again, before Peter can even form any type of plan or fully figure out, boom, he is grabbed once more. Sandman continuing to try to use Peter as literally a battering ram, slamming him against the tower. With so much force, it's literally giving Peter concussions as he says he thinks he's about to pass out. So this puts this entire situation, literally Spider-Man's life, in the palm of Richard's hand, which definitely is a crazy first mission if I had to say, fighting a giant sand creature using your father as a battering ram. So Richard, putting two and two together, thinks fast and decides that yes, he has to turn the giant tower and containment field off. But that only leaves one question, because yeah, if they're able to turn it off and get rid of this containment field, destroy it, Sandman will be free and won't be continuously blasted apart. But free to do what? Unfortunately, that's just a gamble they're going to have to take as Peter's life is on the line. So using the suit's advanced technology and features, in a very traditional symbiotic way, it almost infects the entire tower itself, corrupting, destroying, and shutting it off permanently, which actually has the desired effect, freeing Sandman of constantly being blown apart. But maybe, just maybe, this isn't a bad thing. Now, of course, traditionally Sandman is a villain, you know, one of Spider-Man's worst villains, as I've previously stated. But here, potentially, this is going a different route. As because after thanking the spider heroes for freeing him from being imprisoned in that hellish sand form, he goes on to say, while crying, that those were the first words I've been able to say in almost 3 years. You saved me. But Richard just says, yeah, cool, no problem. But what exactly are you? So So the Sandman goes on to give a brief little explanation of his origin, saying, "I was just a normal guy who got too curious. They caught me after I cut through the fence and snuck into the base. I knew someone was doing illegal experiments here, but I never thought they would make me into one. But they did. I became someone who could literally become the Earth. But after they saw what I had become, they built the towers here to keep me imprisoned, keep me from reforming and regaining my human form. And then they just left, leaving me that way, trapped and hopeless. But now I am free thanks to the both of you." Which makes sense, you know, Sandman isn't being malicious in his intent or anything. But still, Peter goes on to chew him out saying, "Yeah, maybe next time instead of bashing my head into the giant tower, you could just maybe spell out help in the sand or literally find out any other way instead of just violence." And with that, we move over to the next day, where assumingly the spider duo and Sandman just split ways. But here, back at the trailer park, we see Peter get a phone call. And on the other end of this call is Uncle Ben. But yeah, with Peter now having to be on the run, he can't really just have direct contact with Uncle Ben or anyone that he previously known. That would just literally defeat the whole purpose of going on the run and staying anonymous. So instead, they talk on the phone in secret, framing it on the end of this just being life insurance, but still able to sneak in words and hidden meanings to let each other know that they're both okay. Unknowingly to Peter though, Uncle Ben and J. Jonah are about to be in a way more dangerous situation than Peter has been this entire time. As when we move over back into New York, at this now new headquarters of the paper in their office, we see they are visited by a very, very powerful man, Kingpin himself. And you might be saying, okay, what? Why is a Kingpin here, going after a random newspaper firm? But if you might remember from the previous issue, here at the paper, Uncle Ben and J. Jonah want to publish and get out to the public the unfiltered truth. So they have been exposing kingpins and some of the crime and bad stuff going on within New York. But they've been trying to do it anonymously using a secret identity. The name in this case being Ben Reilly. Which at first, I thought it was just going to be a cool Easter egg, oh, Ben Reilly, the other spider clone of Peter Parker. But no, it goes a little bit deeper than that. As when Kingpin's assistant James Wesley hands a couple of pictures to the older gentleman here, we see it is a bunch of picture and photos of people being assassinated. Very cleverly at that, as James goes on to continue saying, tomorrow the Daily Bugle is running a story about the reckless owners and operators of the paper, and I am here on their behalf to see if you wanted to make a comment. Because what you're looking at here, the pictures, are various well-sourced police and forensic reports confirming the deaths and murders of a pretty large number of people, all who happen to share the same name, Ben Reilly, meaning this wasn't just random, this was a deliberate power play, with J. Jonah going on to ask Kingpin, you really killed every Ben Reilly in New York. But no, it doesn't just stop there, of course no. Kingpin being the ore farmer and wanting to assert dominance, he goes on to say, goodness no, I belong to a global organization. Instead, we killed every Ben Reilly on the planet. Which is crazy, like imagine being on the other side of the world and your name just so happens to be Ben Reilly. And because of that, something you cannot control, instantly assassinated by the Kingpin, someone who has direct part and control over the entire Earth due to his connection to the Maker. And of course, the whole reason why he did this in the first place is basically just a show of force and dominance, because the Kingpin wanted to prove a point, going on to say, I just wanted you guys to know that I am an admirer of your work, but strong words, they inflict a strong response. But Uncle Ben and J. Jonah aren't easily intimidated, even by someone as powerful and threatening as the Kingpin, going on to say it's never going to happen, we're never just going to stop. If anything, we will double down. But in another twist, the Kingpin says good, I don't want you to stop. As he essentially sees the paper and what they're doing, trying to quote unquote uncover the real truth and what's really going on, as nothing more than a little distraction. Him going on to say, you give me something to point to pick apart, to reframe, to even ridicule, to further our plans. Because here's what you don't know. As far as you're concerned, I work for God. Of course, referencing the Maker and his entire council and his direct hands and involvement within shaping this entire universe. But to random civilians like Uncle Ben and J. Jonah here, someone like that way higher on the totem pole is almost unreachable to the highest extent. Going on to further say, so yes, please continue what you're doing. Be a useful distraction. But just one thing, stop hiding behind others. You'll just get the wrong people hurt. But even with all of this, even with this show of force, Kingpin being portrayed as this almost immovable object, unstoppable force, Uncle Ben and J. Jonah are still not threatened. They are ready to die behind everything they're working for here, with Uncle Ben now deciding to do a little bit of his own ore farming, going on to say, when this is all said and done, when all of the wrongs have been righted and the shadow is lifted, I'm the guy who's going to write the obituary. Showing that yes, their efforts here at the paper aren't going to stop, cease, or change. They're going to double down, dig deeper, and assumingly work with the heroes and any other good force here within New York and the world to put an end to all this corruption and evil. even at the cost of their own lives. But that is something we won't get to further see here as this issue and video comes to a close. If you have enjoyed, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.